Hi, welcome all to what will be part 1 of a 2-part travel guide for Olympus. Part 1 will cover preparation, and part 2 will be a full boss guide. I might have a few new viewers due to a sudden burst in growth, so I will just give an extra welcome and thank you to all my new viewers, as well as those who have come back multiple times to hear me ramble about a silly little anime game. I occasionally make servant review videos / gameplay guides as servants are being released on the North American server. I don't review everyone. The only ones that I review are servants that I have used practically in many situations prior to the review. I don't believe in the idea of my review being good if all I did was throw the servant in some pointless free quests and read the wiki into a mic. Anyways, Olympus. If that name doesn't give you a sense of unease or a premonition of a thrill, then you either know what's coming and you're prepared, or you have no idea what is in Olympus. You know Shimosa? Think something like that, except significantly harder. There are plenty of difficult boss fights, some of which have a restriction similar to the deadweight Musashi we had in Shimosa. In several fights, you cannot lean on your support list. No support Merlin, no support anything. Just what you have. So, what do you need for these bosses? You might be ready, but you might not know it yet. This video is going to detail what types of damage rolls you need to cover. Before we start, here are a bunch of servants that are amazing and useful and lots of boss fights in the Singularity. Enkidu is high-key busted in general. He gets his divine niche on almost all of the bosses, meaning he gets to stun almost everything. He's usable at neutral because of that. He can even solo some of the bosses. Skaha is good for similar reasons, yet to a lesser extent. She hits harder and her stun isn't locked to divine enemies. However, she is nowhere near as tanky as Enkidu. She can't deal with debuffs like he can, and her NP gain isn't particularly good either. Wow, lots of Lancers here, huh? Ku doesn't have any fancy stun nonsense, and his damage isn't extraordinary, but he is so insanely tanky that he is worth putting in the backline to clean up for most fights. Herc is also a good cleanup unit. I don't think I need to elaborate. Summer Martha is one of those servants that people assume is mid at best, but she really shines here. Once again, anti-divine is excellent. Her status as a ruler means she's usable in pretty much every fight. Her heal and ability to defensively counterclass make her surprisingly tanky. A little debuff immunity can be useful as well. Nobu fans rejoice! Well, the ones that have the Avenger one at least. The Archer one still sucks. This D-tier servant thrives in her divine niche that just keeps getting better. Almost every major boss from Lost Belt 4 to Heian Kyo has divinity. Casually removing defensive buffs for free is huge, especially when you are an Avenger, which means you're designed to be used against almost every class. Mash? Mash. Everyone has Mash. Why put her here? Because there are so many you masochists out here who have her scuffed to all hell. You're forced to use her on a lot of boss fights. Do yourself a huge favor and max those skills. Her mats are really common and she doesn't even cost that much to upgrade. Do it. This isn't a servant, obviously, yet it should be obvious why I recommend this craft essence just from what few recommendations I've made so far. It's in the rare prism shop if you have a bunch of spare rare prisms. Even if it isn't limit broken, a 25% universal damage boost with 30% charge tacked on can still be pretty useful. Alright, let's get into this. The most important damage roll to cover is Riders. We're getting a massive caster boss that many people struggle with. I won't get too deep in the gimmicks. What destroys people in this fight is a lack of good Rider damage options. You're forced to use the story support that doesn't really help at all, so that support Ozymandias will likely be your own Ushiwakamaru. Several high-profile Riders can hard carry in this fight. Ozzy, as already mentioned, is absolutely busted for this fight if you have him. His longevity, his NP seal, and his good burst potential solidify him as an amazing pick. Ivan, surprisingly, is another carry, but you probably won't have either of those. Let's cross out those gold options. Ushiwakamaru is fantastic here because of massive burst and solid team NP support. Mandricardo is lower on the burst and he doesn't have hard survival, but his potential for spam and the fact that he's an easily supported art servant makes him very valuable as well. Another thing you will want for this fight is a servant with a way of dealing with defense buffs. Buff removal is good. Alex combos incredibly well with Ushi as he is able to support a quick ally and remove buffs, all while counterclassing. If you have Rider Kentucky, he is very, very good for this stage. High octane, quick NP spam can punch through those bars at the speed of gold. Ryoma is not as golden. He can work, but his unreliable terrain and general vanilla nature doesn't really help much here. There's Martha if you got spooked by her. She offers what Alex does with the added bonus of sustain and team debuff clear. There's a point where your team gets smacked with a nasty buff block, so she does great. She's unlimited, so she may have shown up at your door already. If you have the XP and the will it takes to complete all of her rank ups, she will do a lot of work there. If not, Alex it is. You also want a good archer. This one's pretty easily covered since there's so many good archers in the game. Ones that use their NPs frequently are very nice. Robin is an obvious pick. Uriel is not. She's great against males, but if Saber isn't male, then she's not good. At that point, most AoE archers can outperform her because her multiplier is complete jank. Also, Olympus isn't much of a sausage fest to begin with. Anyways, characteristics to prioritize in your archers beyond NP fast stuff, Guts is one of the bigger things. Ironically, every Saber boss stage has some gimmick that yeets your defensive buffs. Guts is not a defensive buff for some reason, so servants like Fujino and Tomoe can see some solid use. Oh, also, level David. He's good. Even if you have good archers already, level him. He's useful, especially if you don't have Merlin. You also need a Saber. There's a Lancer with a lot of HP, like 4 bars levels of HP. They spam attack buffs and they get invuln, so someone like Musashi would completely trivialize them with her Pierce Invulnerability and buff removal. Most higher rarity Sabers will do great there. If you have no gold Sabers, don't worry too much. If you don't have Bedivere, worry a little bit more, but still not too much. Caesar is pretty squishy, but he deals a lot of damage. Fergus might be AoE, but he's super reliable in fights like this as an anchor. He's really tanky and Buster Chains are awesome, so he can find some use. Saber Hokusai is alright here. She has a hard-hitting NP that is easy to spam. Her kit is kinda lackluster outside of NP spam, so you'll have to focus more on keeping her alive. As far as non-free gold options go, Lakshmi Bai is one of the best carries you can be spooked by. Her sustain is ridiculous, she removes offensive buffs with her NP, and she just has a bunch of good team support as well. Saber Lancelot is pretty good here too with his consistent crit spam. Yagi shreds this because of his versatile damage mitigation. Here's another quality of life role you may have filled: an Avenger. There are 2 nasty fights with rulers in this Lost Belt, and having an Avenger makes them both a lot easier. However, you don't need an Avenger. One of the fights works with low enough HP thresholds that you might as well use a Berserker. The other one takes neutral damage from everyone except for Avengers. Having someone just sit there and counterclass in that fight that is built around complete neutrality can make it so much easier. Most Avengers range from pretty good to amazing, with a couple non-gold exceptions. Salieri isn't that good, and I really don't need to explain why you shouldn't use this guy. Something to note, Lobo is actually a lot more useful here than you would expect. He has buff removal and overall solid damage capacity. He's useful in plenty of fights. He's particularly good in one boss fight with some unique gimmicks. Those gimmicks are spoilery, so I won't go into detail in this video. Just know that if you don't have someone like him, you will still have access to your support list. He's just another quality of life option. A caster DPS is nice, but not necessary. There's a pretty nasty assassin boss that gives some people grief, but it's another one that allows a support pick. Sanzo and Ilya can crush it pretty easily, and Kiru trivializes it. I would worry more about having good debuff clear options. Medea sucks at dealing damage, but her kit is excellent for that fight, so she is worth the level. Cersei, yeah, I know there's like an 85% chance I said that wrong, but there isn't a right way to say that, so don't bother correcting me, is pretty good too, since she can clear the team's debuffs. One of the biggest speed bumps people hit are a lack of good damage options. Another one is a lack of good support options. Even very good damagers need support in harder boss fights, like the Olympus ones. The point is that you need good supports. If you have things like Merlin and Waver, you probably won't have support problems. So what kinds of things would you have support problems with if you don't have them? First off, debuff control. Asclepius will help you so much with this. Alternatives include Medea Lily, Jean, and Nightingale. Not Archer Nightingale, Berserker. Archer only clears 1 debuff per team member, which doesn't sound too bad until you have one servant on your team with 6 debuffs while the others don't have any. Second off, hard survival. This is a little more easily accessible. David is one of the easiest options here. He has some general use support stuff while also outputting a decent amount of archer damage, so he can help in 2 of the roles that I've mentioned. Fuma is another budget option for this, since he has a bunch of usable debuffs and a targetable evade. Jason isn't a good option. Asclepius offers the team guts, which is technically hard survival. Third off, sustain. Servants that offer healing and damage mitigation. Hans is the best of that group. He also offers offensive buffs and batteries, so he's very useful. Finally, we have taunts. Not every account needs taunters that often. However, there are a few fights that reward taunt bringers more than usual. George is an easy pick. Chen Gong is a personal favorite of mine because you can use him for his damage buffs as well as for his taunt. He's very flexible. I can't guarantee that you will instantly win because of this video. I hope you do, but these fights are hard. A lot of the time it's just up to the decisions of the player. I can't win these fights for you, but I will leave you this one piece of advice. Don't rush yourself. The next thing that is locked behind this story bit is the next part of the story at the end of the year. Don't get intimidated by the whales who will binge this chapter within 2 hours of its release. If you get stuck on a boss, don't sweat it. Take some time to level servants and their skills. There's no reason to waste SQ on revise. Have a great trip!